Two. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the 4th Annual Stanford Conference on Disability in Healthcare and Medicine. I'm now going to start our next session with Ms. Zoe Martin Lockhart from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Take it away, Zoe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe Martin Lockhart, and I am a PhD candidate and epidemiology MS student at the University of Illinois at Chicago. My dissertation focuses on work by disabled doctors and medical students and their allies to increase disability inclusivity in medicine. And my interest and my fieldwork spans both online and offline spaces. I am a white woman with chin length, dark blonde hair with very pink ends. Behind me is a bookshelf intertwined with plant vines, which also decorate the wall behind me. In this panel, we'll be focusing on navigating disability identity and activism in medical social media communities like MedTwitter. My panelists are Andrea Dalzell, Chase Anderson, Anna Valdez, and Britt Graycheck. I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves further in a moment. First, I want to say the questions I'm going to ask the panelists really emerged out of mutual exchanges we had in the last few months, and some were suggested more or less directly by the panelists and developed by them. So while this is a panel and I am the moderator, I really see this as a platform for these guests to have a conversation with each other and to have an exchange about their experiences in the social media universe as people with disability and or extremely strong allies of people with disability, as folks in medicine, as folks with various minoritized experiences and identities. And when we met about a month ago to prepare for the panel, I had this tentative agenda for the meeting. I had already sent out some draft questions that the panelists had written really heartfelt and moving responses to. And then it was 40 minutes into our meeting and we hadn't gotten to anything on the agenda because they were having such a rich conversation that just sparked immediately and organically between the four of them. So I see the 4 questions I'm planning to ask them as a launching pad for these kind of exchanges. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of their mutual dialogue. I'll be here to provide some structure, especially temporal structure, since we only have about 50 minutes. And then we'd love to hear from you. The 4 panelists were very clear that they wanted to make sure we left time for audience questions. So please put your questions in the chat, on the Slido chat. Please put them in also throughout the session, because then it's easier for me to kind of collect them and see what turns out to be popular over time. Remember, though, that Slido, this chat platform that we're using for the conference, has 2 options for viewing. You can see either most recent messages, or you can see the most popular ones. So go ahead and like things that you want to hear about if somebody drops a question that you also think is interesting, and that will allow me to kind of assess what I should ask. So now to the panel. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'd love to have you introduce yourselves, say also maybe a little bit about what different language and terms you use to identify or describe yourselves, and why those particular words and phrases are important and meaningful to you and why you chose them. So anyone want to jump in?
I'll kick us off, as long as everybody else is okay with that. Hi, everybody. I'm Chase. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist and an assistant professor at UCSF. I trained for medical school at Northwestern, and then went to Mass General for residency, and then UCSF for fellowship. And then I loved UCSF so much that I decided to stay. I work with mainly minoritized kids. I work at the Zuckerberg General Hospital, as well as the Pritzker building, which is our new psychiatry building at UCSF. And it's just really lovely to be with all of you, and especially my other panelists, and then Zoe as well. All of them have been amazing throughout this whole process. So I really want to say how much I appreciate them for doing all of this. And I think the term that I use for myself is minoritized. It's a term that I didn't use years ago because, first of all, it like wasn't really talked about as much. And then somebody actually sent me an article about like why saying minoritized is important versus minority. And so the article talked about how it helps you unlink some of the things, the damage that's been done by America to people who are minoritized. A lot of the time when you say minority, or when people say minority, it kind of places blame on that person who's a minority. And so then saying minoritized actually like takes the onus off of that person, because what's happening in America is not their fault in any way. So I actually started using that term with kids, and a lot of the kids that I work with, they're adorable and they're using the term minoritized too now. And this is not to say that terms won't change as we go along. We see that we are at a point where our language is shifting a lot and very quickly. And I think that's actually a very beautiful aspect of our culture right now. Obviously, as we know in America, some people are freaking out about it, but I think overall, like using minoritized has helped me as a minoritized person be like, these are not issues that I caused. These are things that we are all dealing with and have to navigate. And so it creates a little bit more culture for me and unlinks some of the like shame that I used to have. So that's why I use that term. And I am also somebody who I want to ask what other terms people use, because somebody might describe themselves differently. And I think that's another beautiful part of our language is we might be talking about the same thing and use different words. So let's converse about that a little bit. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Chase. I'll go next. My name is Anna. I am a professor and chair of nursing at Sonoma State University. I am a phenotypically white appearing woman with shoulder length hair, wearing a peaches colored top and a black blazer. Behind me is a photo of Sonoma State University. My pronouns are she, her, aya. And my experience before becoming a professor is about 21 years experience stretcher side in the emergency department or in out of hospital emergency transport. And currently I teach, and I'm also the editor-in-chief for the Journal of Emergency Nursing. I'm so excited to be here with this panel. And in terms of the language that I use identity first language. So I call myself a disabled person. I used to use person first. Anna is disabled. But as I've become more comfortable with identifying as disabled and putting that out as a part of who I am as a human being, I've tended to gravitate more towards identity first. However, I realize when people use person first that they're trying to be respectful. And so I am perfectly happy with being referred to either way.
I will go next. Jumping in, my name is Andrea Dalzell. I'm an African-American female with about mid-shoulder or a little bit longer hair. That is blonde. I am a chief operating officer for the Access Project Harlem, New York, as well as a registered nurse in New York City. I am the first registered nurse to use a wheelchair to go through nursing school in New York State, as well as being the first to work in the ICU from the chair here in New York at the peak of the pandemic. I go with person first identity just because of the fact that I have 3 identities that are visible to the world. So I do hope that you identify me as a person first, and then you can go ahead with all the rest of them, that I'm a woman, that I'm a Black woman, that I happen to have a visible disability. So therefore I'm inclusive to many different parts of the community. So please see me first. And therefore I try to address person first just as a respect thing, like Anna had said. And make sure that I asked also how people want to be identified. I go by she, her, hers, and that's me.
Cool. Hi, my name is Britt Greatrick. I'm an MD PhD student at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Tucson. Originally, I went to Portland Community College and then Portland State University and then went to med school. And I'm very proud of the fact that I went from community college to med school. So I use she, they pronouns, and I identify as disabled and neurodivergent. And as a trainee, so right now I'm in my PhD years of the MD PhD program, I feel like the umbrella terms like really help protect students. So to say like I am disabled rather than I am, insert diagnosis here, insert symptom here, kind of protects us from a lot of the stigma in medicine. So I didn't realize that I identified as disabled until I had a brain injury in college and went through the process of kind of like coping with, new disabilities, coping with old disabilities that got worse or like changed or altered and no longer had coping mechanisms for it. And so I really identify strongly as disabled instead of someone with disabilities because I've kind of taken back a lot of my own strength in the process of identifying that way. And then in terms of physical description, I am a white lady. I'm wearing pink glasses and I have, I think, shoulder length brownish hair and a black and white polka dot shirt with a little red bow tie-ish thingy. And thank you for having me here.
Amazing. Thank you all. I'm going to jump in with the second question, and then from there, hopefully you all can kind of bounce off of each other a little bit more. The second question emerged out of some really interesting conversations that we had during that meeting I told you about. So what I'd like to ask is, medical and healthcare institutions and training programs often issue guidance on professionalism online. You all are very present online. And certainly while being respectful and avoiding bullying of people is really important, a lot of the guidance offered by institutions severely narrows what social media users should do. And the guidance can sometimes also be sexist and racist and biased in other ways. So I'm wondering, how does this construct and particular deployments of professionalism affect people with disabilities in your observation, particularly in your experience? And feel free to jump off of this question also in other ways that you might want to interpret it.
I'll hop in and say, when I was a pre-medical student, I was pretty afraid of what medical schools I was applying for would interpret from my social media. So I was really quiet up until I got into medical school, and then I was like, okay, here we go. Like maybe I can like let a little bit out. I've never seen professionalism used in a good way, like ever. It's always used as a weapon, like it bludgeons people's identities out of them. And I don't know, if you pay attention to Twitter during Match, which is when students are applying for residency, you can pretty much see the template. It's very bland. It's like, I am so-and-so, I am applying to this field. I enjoy professional thing, and this hobby. Like, please love me and give me a job. So it's like, I feel like all of the guidance is vague for a reason. It's vague to control people. So it'll say, you can talk about our school, but it has to be in a nice way or something, or it doesn't directly say you can't criticize the school because of our First Amendment. Like, it can't say that, but that's kind of what it means. And I feel like as a disabled person, I have to be really careful about the experiences I talk about and like how I talk about them, because I still have to apply for residency, and I know everybody is like watching social media kind of like a hawk. So I feel like for the most part, professionalism is used as like a form of control, and I wish it really wasn't that way. I wish professionalism meant instead like you not only do your job, but you help people while you're doing your job. Or like, I wish professionalism had a different meaning than it currently does. I miss like pre-med school, I would think professional meant like, oh yeah, you dress snappy, like you look really sharp today, you look really cool. But it doesn't mean that anymore. It means that like, you fit that box, you fit that really bland template that a lot of people want. But I've started to embrace it more as like a two-way filter. So like, I filter out the schools that maybe don't want me, and they filter me out because they maybe don't want a queer disabled medical student. And that is kind of okay with me, and I hope that I don't lose out on opportunities for it, but I feel like it's kind of their loss, not really my loss. That's what I feel like.
Yeah, for me in the professional social media online realm, I have to remember that code switching in my community is a major factor. In order for me to be digestible, I have to understand what professionalism means for the persons that I'm going to be in front of. I don't have the luxury of just fitting into that box like, Britt describes, right? And because I am very visibly 3 identities, it's extremely hard to not find a very bland ground so that I can definitely fit in or even have the opportunity to get to the door so that I can even fit in. So I have to be very careful, even sitting on this panel with you guys. I have to make sure that the words that I'm using is digestible enough for everyone to be able to interact with me, because I cannot come off as aggressive. I cannot come off as someone who doesn't know what they're speaking about, because then I might not potentially have the opportunity to sit on another panel. And that has been the case since I started before nursing. And I've been a nurse now for 5 years. And I can give you a scenario where even when I got into nursing school based on merit, based on my ability to do the job at that moment, my scrubs were too big. So therefore they looked sloppy, but not because I couldn't afford different scrubs, but because my scrubs were just big and how they fall while I'm sitting, and that my professional attire doesn't come from my body frame, and I can't find something that's going to fit me correctly. So I'm here trying to pin it in and make it look decent, but then I'm also worried about pins sticking me. But then you hear the comments, oh, it's wrinkled or it's pulled here, or you can see something. And here I am just feeling so insecure and not knowing how to just make it right. Every minute of my day where I'm not in my home really comes down to how digestible or professional I am for the community that I'm around, because there's so many stigmas just being a Black woman, being a person with a disability, and then, being a woman. I'm fighting against gender. I'm fighting against all of these identities every second. That professionalism doesn't always come easily. And if I don't have my hair straight and it's curly and I'm in jeans and I'm not in slacks, like, what is my identity being portrayed as? And I'm constantly asking that question. And I can honestly say and possibly say that a lot of my success today has to come with how I code switched, not only verbally, but had to do it with my clothing and my presentation just to be here today.
I really want to echo what my 2 fellow awesome panelists said. There are so many parameters that we have to think about for professionalism. I also want to take note from my other 3 panelists and apologize I didn't describe myself when we first started. So this is all of us learning from each other. My pronouns are he and they, and I use them interchangeably. And I am African American, and I'm wearing a blue shirt with white flowers on them, which is very bright and vibrant right now. And my hair is extremely green at the top as well. So I wanted to put that out there. I completely agree with what we're saying about professionalism. It has been written about that it is used to attack people. It's weaponized to attack minoritized people to try to keep them in their place. It is another form of what we have done to minoritized people across history. This is just a new and overt sometimes and subtle way of keeping somebody in their place, basically. I think what I think about too, I really was thinking about residency, and there were secret meetings about my not wearing a tie. Nobody in faculty asked about why I didn't wear a tie or why I didn't like ties. It's because I have panic attacks sometimes and I feel like I'm choking. And also, like, I feel ties are like a symbol of oppression, but that's like a whole nother story. There were other things that, like my dyeing my hair or how I presented things. I had an attending one time say that I was too fast with my plans, even though the patients were getting better. And he made me explain for an extra 45 minutes out of my day every medication choice I had made and why. He had never done that to any other white person. I asked them. And there was a thing about, like, Black people sometimes can't appear too intelligent in some ways. Minoritized people are not allowed to be intelligent and gifted. And that was a big shock to me coming from MIT, where I went for undergrad, because everybody was like, just be nice and like, don't be a dick. And like, that's all we care about. Like, you can wear, like, you can be so slovenly looking, and like, people didn't shower and stuff. And we were just like, these are our friends. They're like little nerds, and let's like build a Star Trek future. So being in medicine was a shock for me. I think the other thing about professionalism is it crosses so many different boundaries, and it crosses a minoritized person's boundaries when we are trying to slot somebody into like a certain group. There's this thing called minority stress. And so not accepting somebody for who they are, especially minoritized people, leads to internal shame and stigma. We don't think about how what we do with professionalism and how we use it creates so much shame for people in medicine that then impacts patient care. There are actually studies about this. And the best thing that somebody can do who's minoritized for patients is be themselves, because they need to see that representation. So if we're shutting that down, how are we also doing a disservice to our patients as well? And for me personally, I also want to say anything I say here, like I have to caveat with like, these are things that you can do and try in different circumstances, but I push the boundaries a little bit. I think people know me for that I like do my hair. I don't wear a tie. I post like shirtless pictures on like Instagram and Twitter all the time. And I'm lucky that UCSF, like their account will like those pictures and like sometimes share them. I'm like, okay, that's a lot. But like, professionalism is viewed differently here. I think it is very much more in the psychiatry department. Professionalism is, how kind are you to patients? How nice are you to your other staff members? How much do you go above and beyond for the people that are around you? That is what professionalism should be. I think it has been very much warped and weaponized by people who want to keep the status quo. So I try to push it that a little bit, but I say that from a place of security now. I would not have done things like this in residency. Some of the other panelists know I was under a pseudonym back in the day when I first started, because I was in residency and trying to like speak out about things. It was not safe to do so at that point. I had other colleagues who had experienced blowback online for things they had done at the said during residency. So I want to say that we just have a long way to go, but there are places that are thinking about professionalism as like, how kind are you? How generous of spirit are you?
I agree with everything my fellow panelists have said. And I want to reiterate that again, that professionalism really is weaponized. And in nursing, there's a real preference for homogeneity, and homogeneity to the dominant group, which is white women. And so when you come into nursing school, you immediately start getting stripped down, as Andrea was talking about, to kind of build this homogeneous figure or identity, how you're supposed to be, which really strips away a lot of identity from all people who are involved. And then in terms of being able to speak out and having restrictions, I come from a place of privilege that I am a tenured professor, and I recognize that. And since I've been tenured, I speak out quite a bit more because it's less frightening for me. There really is fear about what we say, but I have used that privilege to be an activist and to speak out. And I'm really pushed to continue doing that because I hear from so many nurses who feel like they can't say what I'm saying, or who hide their disability. I hid my disability for at least 10 years. I pretended to be well. I didn't tell people what was going on with me because I felt like I would be cut out of nursing, that people would look at me and be like, well, you shouldn't be a nurse. If you can't do everything this way, then you shouldn't be a nurse. And, you know, I was hesitant before I became tenured, especially to put out messages because I was afraid I'd lose opportunities, just like Andrea said, that I you know, people would look at that and go, oh, she's disabled, let's not book her to speak, let's not give her this project, or maybe we shouldn't have Anna work on this because it would be better for her, you know, and being kind of paternalistic and well-intentioned. And then I want to give an example of how professionalism shows up because it happened to me recently. So I was on a webinar, a national webinar related to nursing, large audience of about 500 people, excellent speaker, a nurse. And as she was speaking, she kept using the words lame to refer to her students' projects, which, you know, as an educator offended me, because why would you say something like that about your students? And imagine if they heard you say that, right? But lame is a derogatory term. And yes, it has different meanings, but it's hurtful to people, especially disabled people who have mobility issues. And so after about the third time she used the word, I put in the question and answer, because there wasn't, you know, we couldn't come off the mic. And I put in there, you know, this is a great presentation, really appreciate it. As a disabled person, I would appreciate it if you stopped using the word lame, and this is why. And I put a little link to an article that kind of explained why you shouldn't use that word. I immediately started getting messages from nurses in the audience. One who posted the dictionary definition of lame and said it has many meanings. And then several who posted or messaged to me that it was very unprofessional for me to say that. And I thought that's really interesting, because my perspective of professionalism was that it was very unprofessional that she was calling her students lame, and that she was using a word that's harmful to people and not being responsive to that. And the person who was giving her questions skipped over my response and just kept going. And I thought it was really interesting the way people respond when we even express that we're being harmed, right? That this is a harmful thing you're saying. And that shows up all the time in nursing. I see it on a regular basis.
I really love you mentioning that, Anna, just because of the harm that we do. I think we don't even, like, people don't even recognize sometimes the harm that professionalism does to people. We now know from studies, and we've known for a long time, especially as minoritized people, words can hurt. Words can have a lasting impact. And so we need to really be thinking about that when we're going through things, and how professionalism is used. And what I really am struck by when you were telling that story, and also thank you for sharing that, is why wasn't what you were doing seen as the height of professionalism? Because what we saw immediately, or what I'm hearing, is that people doubled down and became defensive instead of even asking you more, saying like, is there a specific reason this is harmful or this is hurtful? Because if somebody's being hurt in the audience, or feels like something is hurtful to them, or like this is in academic centers too, why are we not thinking, why is that hurtful to that person? Why are we not taking a step back to be a little bit more humble and say like, hey, maybe I made a mistake?
Well, that's because disability in the realm of professionalism isn't really a thing. Disability is at the forefront, and it's these conversations that we're having that within the last 10 years we're pushing. Well, let's not go back as far as 10 years. Let's say post-COVID max, okay, and the handle that we have now. What happened pre-COVID was that when people with disabilities were asking for accommodations, they were looked at as unprofessional, so therefore we're not going to give them. Then the pandemic happens and something hits the entire globe. So now everyone can shift into remote work and behind the screen and all of the other things that we can prove. And we realized how productive people could be once they were given their accommodations. And now look at what is happening today, where these rollbacks are happening on these accommodations or these requests, or how these jobs are being put forth. And now these people are being denied from jobs. What happens when you are maybe neurodiverse and you cannot technically speak to the capacity because you're overstimulated? Maybe your facial expressions aren't giving what someone needs in that moment, but yet you're being considered unprofessional because your disability is on display. I don't understand why we continue to dance around what is actual professionalism if what we're doing is really producing work. If we're really just, like you said before, Chase, is that if our patients are getting better and we're producing the outcomes that we need to produce, why is it coming down to a hair color, a tattoo, a facial expression, the pants that I'm wearing, the shoes that I have on? Like, these things don't actually impact the production, right? And that's where we're missing the mark now. And I understand that a lot of bias is implanted onto the fact that we need to be in person, right? And there is sorry guys, that's my dog. And we need to be people, and we need to be able to work together and see people where they are, meet them where they are, but we don't have the language to be able to do that. We don't even train on how to do that. And that starts at the educational level. So because professionalism is based on the bias and the perceptions that we wear as human beings onto someone else, it goes into how we then function. It doesn't matter where you're at, in RN, MD, medical, non-medical, the fact that it's not in our training, it's not in our natural language, it's not in our educational system to be able to say, this is what we are expecting versus this is what we consider professional. It's an arbitrary thought process that's really coming down to one person's bias.
So I'm going to jump in and switch to kind of maybe the other side of this. We've talked a bit about how professionalism is used to box people in and control behaviors in a lot of ways, but also as a response when people are feeling uncomfortable, maybe because something falls outside the norm. So I want to ask all of you, bringing it also back to the social media realm a little bit, how has social media liberated you?
Oh, I'm going to take this one first. Okay. So I was Miss Wheelchair New York 2015. This is like the real ramp up of TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, like Gen Z was like blowing up social media and everything was happening. And I'm in the thick of trying to build a platform, life, liberty, and the pursuit of access as Miss Wheelchair New York. And I wasn't literally utilizing any of those social media platforms until I got into nursing school and was told that I couldn't be a nurse. I already got in and still told that I couldn't be a nurse. Okay, fine. I documented my journey through nursing school. So now I've built this following that is seeing me overcome all of this stigma and hearing me go through school and have my comrades with me, building up this anticipation to pass my boards and get a job. And I start getting the messages saying, are you sure you're going to be able to get a job? You may not get a job as a wheelchair user. You're going to have to start thinking about desk jobs. What else do you want to do besides being a bedside nurse? And it started to really scare me. Okay, well, I put it to the side. I passed my boards on the first try. And within 2 weeks, I am sending out resumes, applications, I'm applying. 76 clinical job applications went out. I went for 76 clinical interviews. All of them rejected me. All of them. But I documented every single one while on social media. This is interview number 23, interview number 46. And I was literally saying to my followers what was happening. I'd go in extremely excited for this interview and come out defeated. Like, you already knew that interview either went really well, but I wasn't going to get the job, or it didn't go really well, but there was hope. And social media had my back. Social media, all of the ones that were building it up, all those Gen Zers, Gen Alphas, everyone that's on the younger side that is connecting with me because I am building my platform based on education, they're all saying to me, yes, you can do it. You can keep going. You can. And they're the one giving me the fight to keep facing everyone else telling me no. Facing rejection is extremely hard for anyone. Facing 76 after knowing that you've proven to a whole educational system that you can do it is even worse. It's one of those things that it rips you apart. And that's how social media actually freed me. It was one of those things to say, no, you've already proven it. You have done it. Thank you for telling us. And now we're going to fight on your behalf too. It was being able to gain allyship. It was able to bring other people into the conversation about what I could do and how I can do it, and make those decisions not so based on me, but putting it back onto somebody else. Like, my rejections weren't my fault. They were based on someone else's bias and perception. And yeah. Now I'm here with you guys 5 years later, and it's because of the hope that social media gave me, because I had the courage to actually tell my story.
Andrea, as a nurse and a nurse educator, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I want you to know that I continue to work hard to try and change the culture within nursing. And I'm so glad that you had that inspiration and that you're here with us as a nurse today. We are better as a profession because you are in it. For me, I wasn't that vocal about being disabled, again, because of fears of being left out of opportunities and things like that, really until the pandemic hit. And then because of decisions that were being made, I really had to become an activist. I really had to speak out because I'm immune compromised. Decisions that are being made then and now could cost me my life. And I felt like disabled people were not even being considered, like, being disposable. Like, yes, we'll lose the disabled people, but they cost us money anyway. So, we don't really care. But the joyful part of that is the numbers of people who told me that they didn't know what ableism was before I explained it, and that they didn't understand that these things were happening for disabled people, and particularly the nurses who reached out who said, I'm disabled, it's so hard, so many of the things you talk about happened to me, but I don't tell anybody I'm disabled because I'm afraid, and you speaking up makes me feel safer to do that, or you speaking up makes me feel like there are still opportunities for me. Even though I'm disabled, I know that I can continue to do things. So what it's given back to me has been incredible, and has really fueled me in wanting to speak out more and wanting to really change the culture in healthcare. We're supposed to be a caring and healing professions, right? But we are so harmful to ourselves, each other, and the communities we serve. And I think that has to be dealt with. We have to refocus on what are we doing and why are we here, and stop harming each other. And so my exposure to social media has given me a platform to share that and to have a voice for really changing what it is we do, so that there's equity and inclusion and people are treated with respect and kindly. I mean, that's professionalism. That's what I want to see, just like Chase said.
As a student, I still have to be very careful on social media. So I watched Chase under his pseudonym when he was in residency, and I kind of had this idea of like, oh, maybe I should do that too. But for me, it's been largely supporting others, being able to like liberate other disabled pre-medical students and medical students who are going through the same thing and thinking that they're the only person going through it, when actually for every one of us on social media, there's probably like dozens that are going through the exact same experiences, the exact same struggles. And for me, a lot of the liberation happens not necessarily publicly, but in DMs, helping medical students, helping people navigate really awful things, really awful, targeted professionalism complaints and things like that, and just helping people get through it and know that like there is an end, there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. And also letting pre-medical students know that like, yes, it's possible. Don't let people tell you it's not possible to get into medical school. Well, at the same time, you have the technical standards of medical school applications like screaming at you that say that you have to be, you have to have visual acuity, you have to be able to hear, you have to have like certain cognitive abilities and all this like weird, like, I don't know, kind of like supremacy sounding wordage like on every medical school website. But for me, I feel like I wouldn't be in the current lab that I'm in without social media, and I wouldn't have been able to escape a pretty toxic lab when I started my PhD without social media, because I didn't realize until I started kind of, connecting to my support network and saying like, hey, is this normal? Or like, this situation happened. What do you guys think? And just being very vague and having that support network be like, no, that's not cool. You got to get out of there. And that has been amazing. So now I feel like I can support other students who are also going through, ableist supervisors, ableist colleagues, and kind of trying to find a supportive place. I feel like now that I've navigated it, I can help others navigate it. And I feel like that's where my liberation has come, as like someone who's very vulnerable. Like, I feel like my school could just decide on a dime to just kick me out. Like, I know they wouldn't, because my school has actually been pretty cool. And that they've featured me on their social media a number of times for like Brain Injury Awareness Month and Pride Month and all kinds of cool showcase feature things. But it's still very scary. Yeah, that my liberation comes from liberating others, I think, right now.
I just want to say all of what everybody was saying made me tear up a little bit, just because I admire all three of you a lot, and Zoe as well, from all the work we've done together, and just on social media, you have all been very pivotal in my own life. Sorry if I get emotional. I usually don't do this on panels, but actually, no, I'm not going to apologize for emotions. I'm a good psychiatrist. But social media gave me my dreams back. I was in residency and I was under a pseudonym, and Jack Turbin had told me to be on Twitter for forever. And I was like, I'm going to get roasted. You've seen what the university has done when I speak out in general. And he was like, do it under a pseudonym, because then like you can leverage your power in a way and find other people. And I found community. I was in residency, and this is a trigger warning for people. I'm open about my own mental health, but during residency, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I live with a history of 2 suicide attempts when I was younger. So I'm lucky to be here, and fortunate and really happy to be here. And during residency, because of how things were, I was close to another suicide attempt. But like being on social media actually helped me take my voice back, because I was like, oh, it's not just you. It's like everybody is like, who is minoritized, is experiencing horrible things during residency. And like people bonded. Like we used to have Twitter, like LGBTQ plus roll calls. I miss those a lot. We would do like other roll calls for like people who are African-American and minoritized. That helped me be like, that was all I wanted, was to help people bond and find community. So that liberated me to see those things happening. I think my other fellow panelists know there have been some things on Twitter that happened about a year ago now, but I don't use it as much anymore, and I miss it, to be honest. It was something that was beautiful and something that was a big pillar of like what I loved. I am fortunate that I was at UCSF and like am in a place where I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of community, but like if that gets knocked out, like online for some people, that's like their only community. So it's just something we need to think about too, in terms of like how we enact things online and how we might be liberating other people, but also we could be hurting other people. And that's a lot of power. And so I would say that social media helped me like be more bold. I was really scared in medicine to be myself. I was like, I am wrong. I am wrong in how I exist right now. And this was after MIT, where friends had taught me like, these are beautiful parts of yourself. The world needs that. So social media reminded me of that and gave me my hopes and dreams back. And like, I wouldn't be here today and doing these panels. I wouldn't be at UCSF without the community. Like I remember when Britt and I started interacting on social media, and it just was like, it was so life affirming in a lot of ways. So I want to say that like, thank you to everybody here around that as well.
Do any of you want to jump in really fast, or should I go on to the next question?
I just want to say thank you, Chase. I get sentimental. I tear up too. And I agree, it did provide us community, and it provided me the opportunity to get to follow and learn from all of you as well.
All right, so this is a really great segue, actually, I think, because the next question is asking what disability advocacy means to you. And because we have about 10 minutes left, I'm going to integrate an audience question or two into this as best I can. So what I was originally going to ask was, what does disability advocacy mean to you? How do you approach disability advocacy, especially online? And to say that I'd like to hear about any experiences of joy, of being called out or being called in, of learning, of inspiration, whatever it is, that guide how you approach medical and healthcare disability social media. And so bringing in this audience question, I'm wondering if disability advocacy, and I think you all just hinted at this, I'm wondering if disability advocacy might also look like your choices of what issues you choose to speak on and how you intervene in those conversations. We started off with discussing language, and so much of social media is written words. So how we say things and what we say really shapes what happens there. And so I'm wondering, when you all of you choose to intervene or to comment on harmful hierarchies, power dynamics, biases within healthcare that play out online. Someone in particular was asking about tensions between nursing and MDs, especially around ableism and identity. And their example is somebody suggesting that, oh, if you're disabled or need accommodations or you're older, then you should really just be a nurse and not go into medicine to be a DO or an MD. And I think that there's something here maybe that also connects to Andrea's mention of code switching. Is there something around when or how much you choose to code switch that ends up being disability advocacy if you choose not to code switch or only to code switch to a certain extent or in a certain way? I'm leaving that a little bit open-ended because I want to see where you pick up on it.
Zoe, I love jumping in first, so I'm going to do that if the panel doesn't mind. Okay, so disability advocacy, social media, code switching, all of it is, it's cumbersome. It's a lot to do, but let's think about the advocacy side first. And I just want to mention, right now, social media in general is kind of under attack. Congress is finally starting to put their ways on top of it. And I want to say this as just a highlight. You already don't see a lot of disability in general. There's no representation, but as soon as you get onto social media, it is the one place that people who maybe cannot get outside their door, maybe cannot get outside their bed, they cannot get outside of their four walls, okay? They can escape to social media. And when you start to put limits on who can be where and how they can do certain things, you are making their box smaller. And people who have physical disabilities like myself in 2023, who can't get into a regular restaurant sometimes, and I'm segregated into little boxes 90% of the time because of what is accessible. And we think that disability and the ADA law that's 30 years old has already gotten us to this point to be inclusive. We're not. So disability advocacy for me, I am mostly thinking about disability at large, not just the fact that I'm sitting in a wheelchair, but as a registered nurse, I'm thinking about my clients who may have visual issues. How are they accessing information? My clients who have hearing challenges, how are they getting information? What is their medical looking like? Because we're already throwing these biases out there outside of social media. So then we go back to social media, trying to pull the information that we're looking for. And then we go back to our systems outside in society, we're turned away because of professionalism. So this endless ring of people being turned away in many different instances is only closing the box down for those who are minoritized. And when we really think about my code switching or advocacy, I have to be careful. If I'm talking to someone of my counterparts who I know are in the BIPOC community, in the minoritized community, I may be less code switch, but still trying to keep a very professional line, knowing that they may understand me. And as we grow in trust, I may be able to remove that code switch. But again, grow in trust, you really don't know how people are presenting and how they're interpreting bias based on what's happening in their lives and what's going on. So this is multifold, multifaceted in many different ways on how social media then transcend into everyday, regular societal life. And then again, the ring around. So I mean, advocacy, just speak up, just speak, just one thing. You don't even have to use words. You just put it online, just push it out there and hope for the best. And if you take the backlash for it, then at least you put it out there and someone else may feel exactly how you feel and run with it and get a bigger sight or light onto it. But losing your voice and not allowing for someone to speak or to be heard or to be seen where they are and at, we're already doing that disservice. So we don't need to keep perpetuating that disservice. So advocacy is just far more than what anyone may ever possibly be. It's just saying one word, one time, one place, and that's it.
I think advocacy looks a lot different from a student perspective. Like it involves strategizing really carefully. So I had a autism lecture coming up in medical school, and I remember planning, like, how am I going to bring up the fact that, like, we're only talking about children, nobody talks about adults with autism or autistic adults. And I thought about it for a really long time. Like, I saw that on my schedule and I thought about it for weeks, and I was like, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to go to that 8 a.m. lecture even though it's not mandatory, and I'm going to ask, like, is autism lethal? Because that's the way that I can get the professor to kind of stand there and realize, like, you have no autistic adults whatsoever in the lecture. And there's multiple ways I could have gotten the same point across, but because I was a student, I kind of wanted to do it from a student perspective so that the professor would actually hear what I was saying and hear my voice. And I think that if I was in a different situation, if I was on social media, maybe I would have crafted it differently and brought it up differently, like made a giant thread and talked about a bunch of different stuff and linked a bunch of different research articles and things. But advocacy can look really different depending on the power dynamics. So if I'm a student asking a question, that's a bit safer than a student demanding that you change your lectures or something. And so social media has been a little bit surprising sometimes, because I posted something like, I love hot air balloons, and then someone replies, somebody died in a hot air balloon accident 5 days ago, how dare you? And I'm just like, I'll just delete it, and then who gains anything out of knowing I love hot air balloons? Like, I'll just delete it and get rid of it right there, and then just talk about air balloons a different day. Like, that's what social media sometimes is. It's very volatile and silly. But one thing to ask when you're advocating is what purpose does it serve and who is it helping? And sometimes you have to walk away from the fights because it only drains you. I've had situations before as a medical student where something really bothers me, and it, like, I feel my blood boiling and, like, my bones hurt. Like, I'm so mad about it. But if I confronted it, nothing would happen because of the power dynamic, because nobody's really gaining anything, and it's more just like a visceral response to ableism more than like being able to actually use that as a tool for advocacy. And I think that strategizing and recognizing what paths you can take to actually advocate and cause a change versus like that, that visceral reaction you have when someone says something awful about a disability that no one should be talking so awfully about. And that happens a lot. And I think you have to strategize, you have to figure out what brings you peace, and you have to figure out what you want to prioritize in terms of the outcome of your advocacy. Like, what does a successful advocacy action look like to you? Like, what do you see the end result being? And sometimes it's not worth putting yourself in danger for just getting a professor back because they said something really mean about your disability.
I think for me, so I'm going to be quick so Anna can talk. So basically, social media and advocacy for me, it used to be, I was so intentional about things I tweeted. I was like reading over them. I was like doing, and I realized sometimes I was doing too much work, to be honest, to like not make somebody mad, which then inevitably what Britt was saying, like you can say like, I love bread. And somebody's like, how dare you? What about people with gluten allergies? And you're like, no, I was also thinking about those people. We can hold multiple perspectives at once. Like maybe we all need DBT, which is dialectic behavior therapy, to hold competing ideas. This is not to say that you never want to invalidate somebody's feelings, because they're their feelings. But social media can be very toxic in some ways. And so I was always like, oh, don't piss off people and like write things these ways. My relationship was and then I still got burned, actually, in some ways. And so my relationship with social media actually changed. One thing that Jack actually taught me and other friends, they were like, you're already doing a great job. Like you're doing what you need to be doing. Like you have also like a whole other life. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like, oops, my bad. And I think what I kind of realized too is like, I can advocate in many different ways. I think social media was like a huge way for me for such a long time, but that doesn't mean there weren't other ways I was advocating. Like you being yourself in the room with patients is advocacy. You showing up to work as yourself is advocacy too. And so now with social media, I think everybody on the panel knows like my whole goal on social media, I haven't always been perfect, was to make people feel seen or help people feel seen and heard and loved. Even if there's like, even though like things happened online, I still love all of those people. I love everybody that I've interacted with. liking all the behaviors is not always there, but I love everybody I've met on social media because we're all trying. And like, we might not all have the tools yet to like try in the ways that are helpful or productive, but I still care about everybody because everybody wants to be seen and heard. So now with social media, I kind of just pop on and I'm like, Black Lives Matter, like LGBTQ people like matter too. And like, I love all of you. And then I know that like people are seeing it. And then I just go off and do my own thing because somebody's going to write comments, somebody's going to do something, and I don't need to engage with it. So I'm very quick now to like, if I'll just block somebody or just ignore it because I have other things to do. I have like 3 other panels here who I love and admire, and like that number will always outweigh people like who are wanting to hurt you because of whatever reason. So that's how my advocacy has changed a little bit of like, just be yourself and like sometimes don't engage too.
Thank you, Chase. I follow you, so I know that you spread love a lot, and I appreciate that. And I'll be brief because I know we're wrapping up. But in terms of advocacy, I agree with what Chase is saying. You have to have thick skin. You have to understand who you are, be confident and comfortable in who you are, because people will attack you left and right. Now, when I first started, I used to respond to people, and then I felt like I'm wasting a lot of time for the person I don't know who's never going to hear me or see me anyway. And so I do a lot of blocking and ignoring. Like, if it's benign enough, I'll ignore it. But otherwise, I block and I don't respond to folks anymore who have negativity or harmful things. If it's harmful, it just goes away. And I think the other part of being doing advocacy on social media is really being aware of language. And it's hard to have a nuanced discussion, right, on Twitter or Instagram, but being aware of language and being open to being called in. The example I gave, I called that speaker in a gentle and kind way, and the response was awful, right? So, people will call you in. I have a friend who is non-binary, transgender, and I misgendered them really unintentionally. And they privately said to me, hey, you misgendered me, and it didn't harm me at all, but it could harm other people. And so when I'm so grateful for being called in when I have that opportunity too. So I watch for that, right? So you have to kind of watch for who's trying to harm you and really who's trying to help you and help you grow. And so when that happens, my last thing I'd like to say to everybody is when somebody calls you in, that's a gift. It takes a lot of courage. It took courage for me to say, please stop saying lame in that big forum, right? Because then I had to out myself as disabled to this entire group of people. So when people call you in, it's a gift and it's really easy. You don't have to get defensive about it. All you have to do is say, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing that with me. I won't do that again. And then do some reflection and learning. It's very easy.
Thank you all so much. I would love to keep talking all day, but I know that that would be a lot for everybody. And so I want to close just by highlighting and echoing some of what the audience has been saying in the Slido chat. People are really appreciative of how vulnerable and personal you all were. And they're saying that it's, let me find this comment. I had it. Just a minute, that the session is so life-affirming and touching, and they're sending a lot of love to all of you. So thank you so much, all of you, and thanks to the audience for contributing so much in the chat also. I really appreciate that. And I hope everyone has a lovely break, which we all definitely need in the middle of a long conference.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks to our panelists, Chase, Andrea, Anna, Britt. I can see why you guys have so many followers. It's not just production or number of tweets. You have amazing insights and such a sharp lens of the world as it is. So thank you.
Thank you as well.
Yes, thank you for having us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
This has been a blast, guys.